നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതം എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഒരു കെട്ടപ്പെട്ട ഒരുപാട് സാഹചര്യങ്ങൾ എന്നൊക്കെ അൺലീഷ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് പുതിയ ഒരു റെവലേഷൻ, ഒരു വെളിപാടുണ്ടാക്കുക. നമ്മുടെ മനസ്സിലൊരു ഈശ്വര വിശ്വാസം, ഒരു ദൈവികത, പിന്നെ ഒരു പോസിറ്റിവിറ്റി, ഒരു പോസിബിലിറ്റി എല്ലാം കണ്ടുകൊണ്ടാണ് നമ്മൾ ഓരോ കഥാപാത്രത്തെ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ജീവിതം മുഴുവൻ അങ്ങനെയായി മാറട്ടെ എന്ന് ഞാൻ വിശ്വസിക്കുന്നു.
മറ്റൊരു നമ്മുടെ സഹജീവിയെ ആ സ്ഥാനത്ത് നമ്മളെ കണ്ട് ആ വേദന അല്പം അനുഭവിച്ച് അതിന് പ്രതികരിക്കുക. അയാളുടെ വേദന മുഴുവൻ ഉൾക്കൊള്ളാൻ നമുക്ക് കഴിയില്ല എന്നുള്ളതും വ്യക്തമാണ്. പക്ഷെ അതിന് ശ്രമിക്കുക.
അപ്പൊ അതുകൊണ്ട് നമ്മൾ ഈ ക്രിറ്റിസിസംസ് നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ വരുമ്പോ ഞാൻ ചിന്തിച്ചില്ലെന്നറിയോ, ഇതെല്ലാം ശരിക്കും വെർമി കമ്പോസ്റ്റ് ആണ്. ശരിക്കും ഏത് ഈ ക്രിറ്റിസിസംസ് പറയുന്നത് വെർമി കമ്പോസ്റ്റ്, ജസ്റ്റ് മണ്ണിലെ കമ്പോസ്റ്റ് ആണിത്. ഈ സാധനം വീണാലുണ്ടല്ല, നിങ്ങളൊരു ചെടി ഒന്ന് വെട്ടി നോക്കിയാൽ നിങ്ങള് അപ്പ മുളയ്ക്ക് അവിടെ 2 കമ്പ് 2 സൈഡില്, മനസ്സിലായ? അതുകൊണ്ട് ജീവിതത്തിൽ നിങ്ങളുടെ ഉള്ളിൽ ഒരു കമ്മിറ്റ്മെന്റ് ഉണ്ട്. when you feel that you are right.
നല്ലൊരു കൊറോണ ഇല്ലാത്ത 2021 ഞാൻ എല്ലാവർക്കും നേരുകയാണ്. ക്യാൻസർ ചികിത്സ കഴിഞ്ഞ് തിരികെ പോകുന്ന ഓരോ രോഗിയുടെ മനസ്സിൽ ആ എമ്പതി ഉണ്ട്. വൈ എന്ന് ചോദിച്ചാൽ they have gone through it. അപ്പൊ അനുഭവമാണ് നമ്മുടെ ഗുരു.
ഈ ലോകമെമ്പാടും ഗ്രസിച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുന്ന COVID-19 പാൻഡമിക്കിന്റെ ഈ ഒരു അതിന്റെ ദുഃഖങ്ങളിൽ നിൽക്കുമ്പോൾ മനുഷ്യ മനസ്സുകളിലേക്ക് പോസിറ്റിവിറ്റിയുടെയും പോസിബിലിറ്റിയുടെയും അനന്തമായിരിക്കുന്ന സാധ്യതകളെ എങ്ങനെ നമുക്ക് ഇൻസ്റ്റിൽ ചെയ്യാമെന്നുള്ളൊരു ചിന്തയിൽ നിന്നാണ് നമ്മൾ ഈ ടോക്ക് സീരീസ് തുടങ്ങിയിരിക്കുന്നത്.
We have to feel a sense of mutual responsibility to each other. That is the biggest learning, that no country, no person can solve the problem in isolation. When the problem comes of that nature of COVID-19 pandemic, then we have to feel a sense of gratitude. I keep on calling that we have to create a supply chain of gratitude for each other, and that is a behavioral change, but that is also important in terms of maintaining justice and harmony in the society, sustainability in the society.
Good evening. Hello all. I'm Saif. I'm working as the CEO of Mission Better Tomorrow. A warm welcome to one and all to the second episode of the Global Post Talk series. Post, as most of you know, stands for Positivity and Possibilities. This is a unique initiative of Mission Better Tomorrow. Mission Better Tomorrow, or MBT in short, is a global collective of like-minded individuals, people, and organizations working for the construction of a better tomorrow by creating peaceful, productive, and progressive societies. MBT is built on the 15 years of social work experience of the Nanma Foundation in the state of Kerala. Under the exceptional mentorship of IG of Police, Sri P. Vijayan IPS, we have been organizing structured interventions in the field of education, health, and other humanitarian activities. We have been most active during the COVID time, especially during the unprecedented lockdown, to provide possible support to fellow human beings in need of care and support. Let me mention a couple of very impactful interventions of MBT during the COVID time. Feed a Stomach program, for example, was our initiative to distribute food to the homeless and the COVID fighters. We could distribute around 700,000 cooked food packets from around 24 Feed a Stomach kitchens across Kerala. With the support of initiatives like Student Police Cadet and our responsibility to children, we distributed around 6,000 television sets to support the education of children so that they can attend the classes telecasted through the education channel of Government of Kerala, even while they are constrained to their homes. We have a blood donors bank of 300,000 willing blood donors ready to donate blood, adhering to the COVID protocols during the lockdown period as well as the COVID pandemic period. We had set up a doctor's desk, a drug bank, to provide free online consultation and medicines to patients not only in Kerala but also for Indians residing overseas. Chiri, meaning smile in Malayalam, initiated in partnership with Kerala Police, provides counseling and other support to children in distress during the COVID pandemic period. Our association with Common Man during this period made us realize that it is during these challenging times, it is important to touch human minds with a message of positivity and help them explore possibilities to overcome the challenges of life. Thus, MBT introduced the program Post Talk series. Now, we have eminent speakers joining us every week, and we engage around 300,000 live audience through every session. Impressed by the support and demand from Post audience around the globe, we have now initiated a global series of Post Talk series. Nobel Peace Laureate Kailash Satyarthi sir was the speaker of the inaugural session of the Post Global Talk series. Today, it is the second episode of the Global Post Talks, and we have none other than the magician of words, former diplomat and the Member of Parliament, Dr. Shashi Tharoor sir, as the speaker with us. He needs no introduction. And for MBT, it's a matter of gratification and great honor to welcome Dr. Shashi Tharoor sir to the second episode of the Global Post Talks. Sir will be joining soon. And we have already around 1,000 people who will be watching this program through Zoom. And this is getting live telecasted over thousands of Facebook and YouTube channels and Instagram pages. And we have audience joining from Europe, UK, US, Africa, Middle East, Far East, and so on. And we'll be starting with our speaker soon. Let me also welcome our mentor and our guiding spirit, Sri P. Vijayan IPS, sir, to this eminent gathering. MBT owes to his constant inspiration and guidance. We welcome you, sir. Post would not have achieved its heights without the constant support of its audience consisting of people from across the globe. I welcome you all to this special evening where we engage with a very special person on the topic Life in Post-Pandemic World. Before we move on, let me invite IG Vijayan sir, the chief mentor of MBT and the man behind many nationally acclaimed initiatives to deliver the opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Steve. Once again, welcome Dr. Shashi Tharoor to this august audience. And we are really indebted to Dr. Tharoor for joining us in this evening. And my warm good evening to all my dear friends across the globe. Some people it will be good morning, some people it will be good afternoon. But my great big namaste to all of you. Actually, I have I have no clarity of mind about what or how it will look like that this post-COVID period. But one thing I can surely say that since last March, I have been amongst these different walks of life, destitutes, this street homeless, street children, and this businessmen, teachers, social workers across the globe. So I can definitely say that it has developed some sort of concerns, or we can say that fear or hopes and wishes in my mind during my interaction with these people about this post-COVID period. So I would like to present all this is my thoughts through a short presentation through few slides. So my concerns, and as I mentioned, concerns and fears, hopes and wishes, which I developed during my interactions with these the people from different walks of life. Mm-hmm. And one concern which I see.
Says the file is used by nobody.
One concern I take it very seriously is that is the vulnerable. Sir, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Thank you, sir. I'm Vijayan here.
My pleasure. Thank you, Vijayan. Good. Carry on talking. I'm just looking forward to it.
The vulnerable will be termed to be more vulnerable during this period. So actually, it's for the persons who are on the below the poverty line, on the verge of the poverty line, all over the world. They were adopting some sort of a survival mechanism, sort of a shock absorbing mechanism. But never ever that set of people face this type of a massive shock. How they are going to address this one? That will be a serious concern. And it has actually affected the homeless, destitutes, the persons, we can in general say that the labor, the persons who are only asset is their own labor, and the migrant laborers like that. And it has also led to this increase in gender disparity. The most job, the COVID has become ladies and the women are more jobless, and that's I'm frightened that some sort of a social deviance may increase to cope up with this shocks, or sometimes so-called this immorality may increase. Sometimes it may lead to more fatality in form of suicides across the globe. And if you want develop some sort of a universalist safety net to protect these less privileged sections of the society. So another concern, or that is the what reality is that all of us are starting, either it is a family, individual, or nation, or homes. Mostly people are looking up, or the saving the lives and the livelihoods. That is the phenomenon that the COVID period has actually. We can say that they have pulled back our society at least 25-30 years back. Our dream of immortality, or having a tour into the space, into the other world, or that's all now. It has been put into the shelf. That is the top priority of almost all the people have become this saving lives and livelihood. The budgets of the state are more or less focusing on the populist measures. And the innovations are now centered around basically the biological needs. And I'm afraid that is the physical infrastructure development, the educational factors, and other things may get second or last importance in coming years. And the votes pattern also may more or less go around. That is how the populist the government going to be. Then there's another serious concern or fear is that there are chances of a self-reinforcing recession. The widespread bankrupt bankruptcies may be happen because the many shops or buildings or that homes are closed. They are not able to pay their loans or repay the loans. Credit defaults and potential banking collapses are imminent. And governments to protect their people are started overspending. It may lead to huge debt traps and that may lead to the bankruptcy of the states also. And something good has also happened during this period. We are being locked down. Police was very struggling hard to keep people within the four walls of their homes. And by doing nothing, we are really contributing great service to the nature too. That is now during this period we are experienced the cleanest air and water. The river Yamuna or Delhi city has become more clear. We could see, that we could see the distant mountains from faraway places in the cities, and oceans has become more clean, and dolphins have started playing in Italian canals or Cochin backwaters. The question is that do I learn something out of it? That is the reality that water, earth, and air are the most essential for our life. Or I wish that we would, during this post-COVID period, we would live or exist with the nature. The pandemic, actually, to some extent, we could defend the pandemic because of our unity. Across without any discrimination of caste, creed, and religion or languages, we are united together. The governments, NGOs, the civil societies together. In their own way, they were showering compassion towards the society. So that greatest extent we could survive, and we can at least prevent the large-scale starvation death during this period because of our unity. And the scientists across the world are actually working hard to create new vaccines to protect ourselves from this tiny virus, the attack of tiny virus. The question is that will we be able to maintain or retain that unity? Or I wish that if we could retain that unity in post-COVID period also, we could create a better world, a better tomorrow altogether. Here the thing is that something, that's the one something very serious thing has happened, that the money, power, and this pain, I think that it has become somewhat less meaningless during this period. People were standing in queue for this oxygen cylinders, or the billionaires, Italian or the Spanish hospitals begging for ventilators. Such situations has made that the money, power, and fame may not be that much important when we are really challenged of our life, are really prepared to give a better meaning to our life by understanding or by taking the learnings from this COVID period. So the thing is that I a detailed elaboration about that one, and then the wizard of words, I think that is the wizard of thoughts. So the thing is that sir will be giving a better, but only I think that is, let us all be ready to predict the unpredictable, because the thing is that we don't know that is because when the entire vaccination rollout will be over, and to what extent this vaccine will be more effective, or the whether any more different mutations whether may happen or new virus may come up. But better to prepare to face the unpredicted on any contingencies. I think that if you have so compassionate, if you keep positivity and hope in our mind, always explore the positivity and possibilities in our life, we'll be able to face any unpredictable situations in our life. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us with your words. Now we have the most awaited segment of this program. And welcome once again, Shashi Tharoor, sir.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you.
Sir, just to give you a background in a minute, Post Talk series is the initiative of Mission Better Tomorrow, which is a global collective of people from across the globe, which is standing united for creating meaningful social interventions. And this is the second edition of the Global Talk series. We already have a Malayalam talk series, which we have already completed 40 talks, sir. And as you can see, sir, we already have 1,000 people joined over Zoom. And this is being live telecasted over thousands of Facebook and YouTube channels and Instagrams. And 500,000 people we are expecting to watch this program. And for the audience, now we have the most awaited segment, as I mentioned, the keynote address by our guest, none other than Dr. Shashi Tharoor, sir. As I mentioned earlier, he needs no introduction. Still, Team MBT, as a tribute to him, has created a short video capturing the remarkable journey of Tharoor, sir. Let's watch it. Thank you, Prashant. This was a small tribute from us, sir. And now, on behalf of MBT and the robust audience here, consisting of people from India, UK, US, Europe, Middle East, Far East, and so on, let me, with all my heart, welcome Dr. Shashi Tharoor, sir, to deliver the keynote address on the topic Life in Post-Pandemic World. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Saif Mohammed, the CEO of Mission Better Tomorrow, for the very generous words of introduction, that beautiful video which your team has put together, for which many thanks. Mr. P. Vijayan, IPS, Inspector General of Police, whom I've known for many years and have very high regard for, Mr. Anand Haridas, Engineer Anand Mani, all of you, and the 1,000 people who've logged into this Zoom call, and God knows how many more watching it elsewhere. Greetings to all of you, and a somewhat belated Happy New Year. I'm just very pleased that we've had this opportunity to face issues under your Pause Friday Talk series, flagship program of your Mission Better Tomorrow. And I'm delighted that the organization, mentored by Sri P. Vijayan, has made really serious efforts to discuss not just how we can overcome these challenging times, but as the title suggests, to lead a positive life amidst all the negativity around us. And I must congratulate the organizers for successfully bringing such distinguished and accomplished speakers for your talk series. I gather you've had more than 75 speakers interacting with audiences from across the world, and I'm delighted to join them today. I thank you for inviting me to address you, and I'm particularly looking forward to the interaction that's coming up. Rather than delivering a speech, it's always more fun to answer questions, but I will try and give you 12 to 15 minutes of thoughts on the broad contours of this topic. So let me, in the limited time available, jump right into the topic, which to my mind is the need for a new kind of leadership in the post-COVID world. And though you are all inclined towards positive thinking, I'm going to have to start a little bit with a negative, which is the troubling rise in the last few years of a hostile, stratified, and increasingly insular global order. Prior to the pandemic, already we had seen the beginnings of a cultural and economic backlash against globalization. We had seen the rise of majoritarianism and populism promoted by strongmen, and these strongmen essentially arguing that they were more authentic representatives of their people than the seemingly rootless cosmopolitans who had dominated liberal discourse in an increasingly globalizing world. And as a result, we have seen already a trend starting before the pandemic of countries tending to be more isolationist in their worldview, less committed to the ideals of a multilateral world order, which catered to the larger needs of humanity. Challenges such as the ones that Mr. Vijayan mentioned, combating the effects of climate change, fighting hunger and poverty across the world, addressing the concerns of terrorism, rather than the individual and nationalistic needs of specific countries, which instead have now come to the fore. We've seen heightened bilateral animosity between rival countries, with US versus China, India versus Pakistan, now India versus China. During the pandemic, such trends have only accelerated, and they have been married to, frankly, a fresh wave of deglobalization, which seems to have been underscored by the pandemic, because the pandemic has confirmed for many that in times of crisis, people need to rely on their governments to shield them. The global supply chains that had been the staple of globalization are clearly vulnerable to disruption, and therefore are unsustainable. And when you think of the fact that people suddenly had to confront during the pandemic their own dependence on foreign countries for essential goods. You may all remember when China first shut down at the end of January last year, we suddenly realized that even 75% of the ingredients that go into making pharmaceuticals in India came from China. And without those ingredients, we couldn't make medicines. America, for example, discovered that 100% of their ibuprofen, a key element as a headache remedy, ibuprofen is used in Advil and other well-known brands in America, 100% came as imports from China. So suddenly they said, we can't depend on foreign countries like this, can be fatal. We must ensure that we aggressively acquire medicines. Today, nations are almost tripping over each other to corner vaccine supplies for their own people at the expense of each other. There is a rush to reset global supply chains and to raise trade barriers as a result. Every country is being seduced by the demand for more protectionism, for moving production lines, manufacturing lines closer to home. And even in our country, we have the previously somewhat discredited slogan of self-reliance coming back as our government calls for Atmanirbharta. And during the pandemic, we have seen that borders have become more rigid. Many communities have become marginalized because the notion of us versus them has attained importance in many countries. We've seen, for example, on our WhatsApps, videos of Chinese people being insulted and pushed out of Western supermarkets. We've seen in our own country, our own citizens, our brothers and sisters from the Northeast, encountering incidents of blatant racism because they look like they are of Chinese extraction. We've seen attacks on our Muslim brothers and sisters after the Tablighi Jamaat was blamed as a super spreader. So the signs are mounting that this kind of us versus them mentality, the rising of, shall we put it bluntly, a more sort of selfish nationalistic approach, more isolationism, more protectionism, all of that has been a feature of the last few years, heightened and accelerated during the pandemic. So now to turn to with this background to the topic of leadership in a post-COVID world. While all these things that I've described are complex developments that have developed for multiple reasons and various contributing factors, one can't deny that these trends have accelerated because of the quality or the lack of quality, the deficiencies in the world's leadership. Rather than bringing people and communities with different worldviews and ideologies together, unfortunately, many countries' established leadership has focused on division, on promoting conformity, on shoring up their own power and authority, even at the expense of actually bringing people to live harmoniously with each other. Leadership that focuses on their own immediate short-term priorities rather than on our collective underlying humanity, that has overlooked the fact that ultimately has been demonstrated by the virus, that the virus will strike you all irrespective of which country you belong to, which religion you practice or don't practice, how you vote or don't vote, what the color of your skin is. The virus has no respect of any of these distinctions. And similarly, we too should look beyond these distinctions to our underlying humanity. So I would call for a new kind of leadership in the post-COVID world, that even as societies become more insular, stratified, and hostile, there's a great opportunity for young people like you, committed citizens of India and other countries, to rise to the occasion and seek to address the acute leadership deficiency that the world is currently facing. What does that mean? The new world after the pandemic will need a new set of leaders to bring us back together. Individuals who, though rooted in their immediate localities, and that's always a good thing. You must be anchored in your sense of place, in your own culture, in your own place, but equally, you should be capable of displaying the vision and aptitude to think beyond your immediate borders. We need young people who can revive and champion the idea that we are, as a human community, stronger when we are together. The new leaders that the world desperately needs will be individuals courageous enough to think beyond their immediate interests and the allure of the bottom line. When I say leaders, I don't just mean political leaders. Every profession produces leaders. leaders in companies, leaders in educational institutions, leaders in the police services like Vijay. You must have leaders who think beyond their immediate interests and the allure of the bottom line. Profit is all very well for a company, for example, but if the leader doesn't think about people, if the leader doesn't think about the planet and the impact of his company's work on both planet and people, then the profit becomes meaningless. So this is where I believe that we must work actively to identify the complex challenges faced by all our societies and produce innovative ways to successfully address these challenges. At the same time, new leaders will also need to bring us together again, especially those who have fallen because they're marginalized, they're discriminated against, they're financially vulnerable, or they're socially chastised. Our leaders must therefore not just be managers. It's not enough, even in a company, to just be a manager. Leadership is about solving problems, about making a difference, about bringing about change. So what you will need to assume this important responsibility in today's world, in a post-pandemic world, the qualities of leadership you'll need include a capacity for innovation, for thinking beyond the box, a willingness to work for the welfare of those around you, the courage to offer a brand of leadership that's anchored in empathy. And where there is discontent, whether in the public as far as a political leader is concerned, or in the office if you're a corporate leader to one day, or even as a teacher or still a student, as many of you still are, I would say it's our responsibility to understand what provokes that discontent and to find long-term answers that benefit the maximum number of people. Let me say in conclusion that because we are talking about leadership, I don't want it to be just seen as an abstract concept, applicable only to prime ministers and presidents, to heads of companies and CEOs. I'm talking really about every human being being a leader. Every one of you has the capacity to show leadership in your own family, in your own schoolroom, in your own college, in your own society, community, in your own country, in your life. And I'll give you an example from this pandemic period. We are rightly celebrating these days the efforts of our COVID warriors, the doctors, nurses, and allied support staff, who have worked under immensely challenging conditions to save lives. We must also congratulate and celebrate the efforts of thousands of scientists across the world who made history with the rapid pace at which they arrived at a vaccine. But let us not forget, there are so many touching individual stories that have come out of exemplary leadership by ordinary human beings during the pandemic. Let me tell you, for example, here in Delhi, of the role of Arif Khan, an ambulance driver who ferried over 200 COVID patients, working almost 24/7. He was a man of very modest means, but he paid out of his own salary for the funerals of some of the people he ferried in his ambulance who passed away because their families couldn't afford it. In the process, he tragically caught the virus himself, and he passed away in October last year. Now there is selfless leadership. And it doesn't have to be individuals giving up their lives to serve others. Let's not forget, for example, the role of institutions, civic society, NGOs, organizations like Bangalore's Mercy Angels that organized the funerals of over 800 COVID victims whose families didn't have the resources to do so, or when the societal stigma discouraged them from doing so. Many of you will not remember this, but a year ago when the first COVID death started, there were protests taking place when people attempted to bury victims of COVID because they were afraid that the virus would spread in their communities if these burials took place. I must say that respecting that human beings deserve our respect and our sacred trust even when they die, that was very important. Or let me take a totally different example. There's a tiny village on the border of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar called Bhopatapar. You remember the migrant workers who were marching in hundreds of thousands from places as far away as Mumbai to their homes in places like Bihar and Eastern UP. Well, the residents of this tiny village set up a community kitchen on their own volition on the National Highway 27, not far from their village, because they saw these migrant workers trudging along, hungry, thirsty, their footwear wearing out, desperately trying to make it back to their homes because they had no protection, no help, and no shelter where they were in the cities where they'd gone to work. And these villages, between the announcement of the lockdown at the end of March and the end of May, when this exodus of migrant workers finished, these villages fed as many as 10,000 workers daily. Now, I tell you these stories to say that in our own country, we've seen leadership from very ordinary people, people who don't aspire to be prime ministers or defense ministers or home ministers. Through their actions, many similar efforts across the world, people have come together, and they've displayed that event in our most challenging times, that even in our most challenging times, it's still possible for us to be greater than what divides us, to be able to display compassion towards the downtrodden, and to ensure that the harmony of our societies can be salvaged. So even as we gradually overcome the virus, as I hope we will, as the vaccines, I hope, will help us win the battle against the pandemic, it's important to look forward to the post-COVID world, even more conscious of our humanity, to provide a leadership anchored in empathy and compassion, and to make sure that we always never forget that we must continue to do our best towards the downtrodden and the marginalized. I'll stop there because I've left out a lot of things. I didn't want to repeat some of the very good things that Mr. Vijayan said in his remarks that I heard, such as respect for nature, the environment, all sorts of other issues, but we can talk about them in the Q&A as you wish. So thank you for listening to me. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving us a very vivid and a graphic image of what happens during the pandemic and what could be the way of life for us after the pandemic. Thank you, sir. And listening to you is always a joy, sir. Like the way you present the picture, you portray the picture. Sir, I am Anand Haridas. I am a member of the Mission Better Tomorrow. Now we are moving to the question and answer session, which you said you will look forward to because you love to answer questions. So we cannot let you go without answering questions. The first question is from a bright young lady who is a student police cadet. The student police cadet movement, as you know, is bringing in a huge change making in our youth empowerment. And this lady, Avani, is from Kaumbadi. Avani, are you online?
Yes, sir.
Avani, go ahead. Tharoor sir is waiting for your question.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Avani. How are you?
I'm fine. Am I audible?
Yes, indeed.
Myself, Avani, from Kannur. I'm an STC cadet and a 9th standard student.
Okay.
And, sir, while talking about leaders, you once said that a good leader should also know how to be a good follower and being empathetic. How can empathetic leadership master? Again, I caught you here, the innumerable paradoxes that mark our society.
That's an interesting question. First of all, thank you for quoting me back to myself. Yes, a good leader should also know to be a good follower. That's something I learned from my Secretary General of the United Nations, Kofi Annan, my friend, colleague, boss. Because, you know, there are indeed occasions when a leader must take the initiative, and there are occasions when a leader must be sensitive to what the followers, the people around him, the people he's trying to lead, actually need and believe, and then you have to follow them. So that's why a good leader should sometimes be a good follower. Now, there are lots of paradoxes in our society, and I agree with you entirely that mastering these paradoxes are not going to be, is not going to be easy for everyone. But by empathy, what we are talking about is putting yourself in the shoes of those you're trying to help. You know, if you come in as some sort of patronizing figure who is actually convinced to know all the answers to other people's problems, I don't think you can help them. We have that model of leadership in our own country from our government, and sadly, it hasn't worked very well. Whereas if you actually go and say to people, listen, I want to understand what your needs are. Tell me what you feel. Tell me what your challenges are. And then I will work with you to find solutions that address your needs and problems. That's what I mean by empathetic leadership. The leadership comes in the initiative, but it doesn't mean that you have to know all the answers yourself. It also means listening to others. So bear that in mind, Avani, and keep up your great work as an SPC candidate.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, only you could have thought of making a glossary of Indianness and prepare the A to Z of being Indian, which ranges from Amitabh Bachchan to Sarastan, sir. So the next question, this is from London, sir. Mr. Haridas, are you online, sir?
Yes, I am.
Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
I don't know whether you remember me. We have met several times in London. I was with the High Commission for 46 years.
Wow, yes, I do remember the face very much, Mr. Haridas.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And the last we met was with your family at Malabar Junction in Great Russell Street, just before you were leaving for India. That was what I remember.
Yes.
My question is, sir, what are the changes that you expect in the growth trajectory of India in the post-pandemic world?
Right. Well, I mean, expect and hope for are different things, Haridas. I mean, I think that what I hope for is that we would seize some of the opportunities the post-pandemic world offers. There has definitely been a resetting of global supply chains. And you may know, for example, that Japan actually set up a fund of $2.25 billion with a B to encourage Japanese companies to leave China. Now, ideally, a country like India should have been poised to attract some of these companies and to offer a good working environment and friendly, easy to do business rules and regulations and so on to attract them. But in fact, we have failed so far to do that. First of all, other countries have done better. So a lot of these opportunities have gone to countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, to a lesser extent, Malaysia and the Philippines. Practically nothing has come to India in terms of these companies looking for new places. Secondly, our own failure to completely get on top of the COVID pandemic has dissuaded others from coming here in large numbers. And thirdly, the mismanagement of the economy that has shown us today to be a country with the highest levels of unemployment ever recorded and the most calamitously plunging growth rate. We have gone last year to minus 10.8%, which is shocking because most other countries have either grown a little or stayed close to zero. Some have actually, like China, has grown by 8%. We are the only major economy to have collapsed in the opposite direction. So all of these reasons mean that I cannot say that I expect good news. I would hope, however, that we could focus on getting the things that we need to get right, because mismanaging the economy, starting off with demonetization and so many other disastrous decisions has brought us to a sorry pass from which we must recover. We have a lot of very solid fundamentals. We have hardworking people. Our economy largely grows because of Indians producing goods and services for other Indians. All of those things are very, very important and very, I would say, very healthy elements in our economy. But sadly, some of the leadership we've received has put us in a difficult position. I would like very much to see that change if we can make the right sorts of decisions in the months ahead. There isn't a lot to go. This coming budget, which will be announced in Parliament on the 1st of February, is going to be very key for a significant reorientation of all these factors that have held us back. Let's hope that the growth trajectory will take off in a positive direction.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. You have pointed out the paradoxes that we face as a nation. And to quote you again, You have once written that the old joke about our country is that anything you say about India, the opposite is also true. Our IT experts stride confidently into the 21st century, but much of our population seem to live in each of those other 20 centuries.
That's right.
Your quote.
Yeah.
Okay. So from talking about India, let's move to the world and to the next question. This is from Vienna. And so we have a surprise for you. The questioner from Vienna, Mr. George Padikakudi. Are you online, sir?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
So please,
Hello,
please share the surprise for Tharoor, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Here it is snowing now, very heavy snowfall now. I just looking through the windows. Sir, I am George from the United Nations office at Vienna, Austria.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful.
Many of the viewers of this program may know that Dr. Shashi Tharoor started his United Nations service at the age of 22 and served 29 years for the United Nations, reaching the position of Under Secretary General for Communications and Public Information with additional responsibility of United Nations Coordinator for Multilingualism. Under Secretary General is the second highest ranking position at the United Nations. Thank you very much for your very relevant, very valuable, and much needed talk during this unprecedented time. Sir, my question is, before the pandemic, we were talking about a borderless world. The pandemic has reinforced borders around us, the borders of nations, states, homes, and even quarantine rooms. As you said, COVID-19 has inaugurated the era of deglobalization. What future do you foresee for the global order, especially for global organizations like the United Nations, where you were a high-ranking UN diplomat? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, George. And first of all, best wishes for your own UN career, because I believe it's very valuable service to the world that the UN provides daily in so many different areas of activity. Are you at the UNOV or are you at the IAEA or UNIDO?
I am at the UNOV.
Yeah, excellent. Right.
A couple of years ago, I got my long service award from the Secretary General. I have already completed 37 years in the United Nations system.
My gosh, I only lasted 29 before I came back to India. But very good. I'm impressed.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm very impressed. Well, look, you're quite right that there is more and more deglobalization taking place. And I mentioned that at the beginning of my remarks, that I worry about the multilateral global order. We've seen, for example, that when COVID should have brought us all together, because here was a global pandemic and therefore the globe should have come together to respond to it, what we saw was sadly the opposite. We saw instead that countries looked to their own selfish interests, their own supplies, their own medicines, their own vaccines, their own equipment, and so on. And what is worse, I must say that as far as the UN and multilateral systems are concerned, the way in which so many countries lashed out at the WHO for the way in which it had, in their view, failed to handle the initial response to the pandemic, that created also a very serious attack on multilateralism. The US under President Trump even withdrew from the WHO, though we are now hoping, of course, that under President Biden, it will come back to the WHO. But the point is that the faith in multilateral institutions, I'm sorry to say, is shrinking in an increasingly nationalistic world. Strong leaders saying, we will take care of our people, and perhaps many voters saying, we need to rely on our own people and not some bureaucrat sitting in Vienna or Geneva or New York for that matter. So I think it's a very tense and difficult time. I think there is a real need for serious attempts to reform the UN system organizations so that they will be fit for purpose in the third decade of the 21st century, which is something that, let's be honest, has not been done. If you take Security Council reform, the Security Council still represents the geopolitical realities of 1945. not of 2020, let alone of 2025. Similarly, the politicization of many of the specialized agencies, WHO and its sister agencies, those agencies find that they are very often beholden to a handful of very powerful countries that dictate their leadership, that provide the most of their funding, and that call the shots in the crucial decisions they take. The autonomy of these institutions needs reform in order to be protected. One solution could be that the heads of these organizations should be given a single non-renewable 6 or 7 year term, rather than constantly being vulnerable to the muscle power of the big countries without whom they can't get re-elected. So all of these questions need to be looked at, and there is certainly an argument to be made that we should get countries together once COVID is over to see what lessons we've learned from it. Can we all understand? How did we respond? What was wrong with our response? What was right? What should we do when the next pandemic comes along? Because there will be more viruses and more pandemics. We are sadly living in a world in which these so-called zoonotic illnesses, crossing over from animals to human beings, are getting more and more common because of our own assaults on the environment. All of these things are creating a situation in which I think there has never been a greater need for the countries of the world to unite and find common cause to create, rebuild, reform, and strengthen the institutions of the United Nations system and reaffirm multilateralism as the only effective way forward. I've written a book called The New World Disorder with a co-author, Samir Saran, in which I say the New World Disorder and the Indian imperative, because India is a country which has a strong interest in seeing that kind of revived world order. Whether it'll happen is another matter, but that certainly is my own view and preference.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Now that you have mentioned a book, you have already conquered the world with your words. And this is exactly what Mr. Shaji Philip from Singapore would like to talk about. Over to you, Shaji sir.
Right.
Shaji sir, are you online?
Right.
Hello, Shaji sir. I think we lost him. Shaji sir, are you online? No, fine. Okay. He was one of the questioners that wanted to ask about your writing, your art of articulation.
Art of articulation, oh my gosh.
Yeah, he had asked that how did you fine-tune your vocabulary, which surely is an impressive one.
Well, those are two different things. Vocabulary comes from reading. And I would say read widely, read indiscriminately, read anything you like and enjoy, but read.
Yeah, I'm online.
I've said that very much to
Hello?
all the... I've said that very much to all the students who've asked the question. Your question has been asked.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me? I'm audible?
Your question has already been asked. Sorry.
Yeah, yes.
I'm answering it now.
Yeah,
So,
thank you, sir.
just saying that as far as vocabulary is concerned, it comes from reading, and I would encourage people to read widely and to read whatever interests them. It doesn't matter what. Read good books, read bad books, read indifferent books, but the only way you'll actually enjoy the use of words and learn new ones is by reading extensively and widely. So that's the first answer. But on the question of articulation, that's different because that involves speaking and not just reading. And I would argue that with articulation, there is no substitute for just going out there and speaking to audiences. Whether it's 10 people in the conference room in your company, whether it's your class, your school, your college, or whatever the institutions are, whether it is a mass rally or a huge gathering organized by a Rotary Club or an NGO. There's so many different platforms that most of us will find access to. We have to have the courage to go up there and actually address a crowd. It's not easy. And the first few times people will feel nervous. They'll be afraid they'll speak badly. They'll make mistakes. They'll feel that maybe what they say will not be understood or appreciated. But the only way you can improve articulation is by doing. Kerala, unfortunately, we have a particular paradox. I've heard from many non-Keralite CEOs in Kerala that they have no problem with the book knowledge of their Keralite employees. So vocabulary is not the problem. Knowledge of textbooks, knowledge of theory, excellent. But when these young people have to speak, whether it's to do a presentation in the company, whether it's to meet with a client, whether it's to address a consumer, they freeze because even though English is their second language, it is not the language It is not a language that they use very much, and therefore they are very reluctant. And usually when they do speak, they don't speak very well or coherently. And I would say to all my young Keralite friends listening, and I'm assuming a majority of the audience is indeed from Kerala, that they should make a real effort to overcome this. It's an unnecessary self-inflicted handicap. Be proud of Malayalam, be secure in your Malayalam, but for God's sake, speak to non-Malayalis as often as possible. Force yourself to articulate. And let me say, articulation is one thing that only gets better with practice.
Hope he has answered your question, Shashi sir.
Yeah, it was a fantastically. I mean, I like it. Actually, I'm Shaji Philip from Singapore. Yeah, I'm a railway professional, but as a social cricketer, I'm running a social cricket for Singaporeans and migrant workers for around 2,000 to 3,000 players.
Wow!
And, we are getting, weekend cricket for all these migrant workers over here. I know that you have been to Singapore and played in Singapore Cricket Club.
Indeed, I played in the Singapore Cricket Club. I played for the Singapore Indian Association, and then for a couple of years for the Singapore Polytechnica. They were a very nice bunch of guys, and they were indeed mainly from the subcontinent. We had a Sri Lankan captain, we had Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis. It was a very good team, and I had a very good time with them. And then years later, when I was contesting for Secretary General, I came to Singapore and played in a guest match in 2006. And managed to take, you were there? Okay. That's the only time I've been reported in the sports pages.
And even a year ago, I was the captain for Muhammad Asuluddin and Tiragarane Dilshan in Indian Association ground. I captained them. I mean, that was my best moments of my life. I mean,
excellent.
Thank you.
As a cricketer.
Good luck, Shaji. Keep it up.
Thank you for bringing the cricket.
I hope you will come down again to Singapore soon, and we'll have some more cricket, and of course, literally chats. And
in a post-COVID world, we'll do that in a post-COVID world, Shaji. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. That brings us to the end of the question and answer session. For those young people among the audience listening to Tharoor sir, he said about the need to read and articulate. And let me remind you, he has once written that in his childhood, he competed against the calendar and wanted to complete 365 books by year end. And he crossed that mark before Christmas. Isn't it, sir?
Yes, but I wouldn't recommend that to young people, because I think they should read for pleasure and not read against a deadline. Okay. So no artificial deadlines. Just read and enjoy reading. That's what I would say.
Okay. Sir, there is one segment that we thought when we thought of having it when you are decided as a guest. This is called a blind spot. This is a rapid fire question. We will ask short phrases to which you have to respond with what comes to your mind first. Are you ready, sir?
Absolutely. It'll have to be very brief because I'm already late for my next event. Let's go.
Yes. So the first question, the first word will be social distancing.
Well, social distancing is not so great because I think we need as a society to come together, not to be distant from each other. But physical distancing during pandemics, viruses and illnesses is very much advisable.
Okay. So being bookless.
Well, I'm never bookless, I have to say. In fact, my briefcase when I'm traveling to Thiruvananthapuram on those 4-hour flights from Parliament in Delhi usually involves at least 2 books, sometimes 3. And most of them remain unread because I have other work to read or other work to do on the flight. But I just feel, what happens if my plane is delayed, the engine gets damaged and the plane is stuck on the tarmac? I must have a book. It's almost a security blanket for me is having that book. So I can't imagine being bookless.
It's a cover drive.
Well, the cover drive is one of the most graceful shots in cricket. And I think there's few things more elegant to watch than a left-handed batsman's cover drive. Elegance is not enough. When I was a young cricketer and I was particularly bad, I looked very elegant at the crease, or so everyone told me, but I never made very many runs. I think results are perhaps more important than elegance.
So the final word is change making.
Well, the fact is that change making is indispensable. I've always said that the reason we are on this planet is actually to make a difference in this world for being here. And one of the things you can do is bring about change in the lives of people who are less fortunate than you are. People who are going to good schools should know what it feels like to be a kid who's not able to read, who's selling flowers at a traffic light. People who are working in good jobs should know the travails of the unemployed, and so on and so forth. So I would urge that young people should indeed, to use the words of your own organization, give themselves the mission to work for a better tomorrow. And that does mean making a difference in the lives of ordinary people, those excluded from the opportunities that the people listening to this Zoom conversation are able to take for granted.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot for finding
Thank
time.
you, and thanks to all of you.
So just before you leave, sir, we have one more surprise. We find a friend of yours in the group. Let me just introduce you to Mr. Soman Baby, the face of Indian diaspora in Bahrain.
Yes.
Soman, sir, are you online, sir? Soman, sir?
Give him my regards. He must have given up since we're running behind schedule a bit. Don't worry, give him my best wishes.
Yeah, might be not unmuted. That might be.
Okay, all my best wishes, sir. All my best wishes.
So we will go into the formal winding up session, and I invite Anandamani, sir, to deliver.
Now I can hear you. Just I wanted to say one thing.
Yeah, Soman sir is there.
Yeah, sir. Congratulations. It was an excellent presentation.
Thanks, Soman.
It was such a wonderful presentation, and only thing is you talked about acute leadership deficiency in Kerala. How do you find the leadership?
You are asking me a political question that Mr. Vijayan is going to be very worried about. But let me say that, as you know, I work for the Congress Party. I'm an MP of the Congress Party, and I'm looking forward to changing the leadership in the state in a few months' time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't mean the Congress Party's leadership, I mean the state's leadership.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll talk offline on the larger questions. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year to you, and all the best.
Thank you.
Bye. And to my good friend Anandamani, I hope you'll excuse me, Anandamani. I was supposed to be in another conference at 7:45. Will you allow me to take my leave, and thank you very much.
Yes, I am just running off with my phone. Okay.
All the very best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, joining us.
Thank you, Vijay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Respected Dr. Tharoor, Sri P. Vijayan IPS, my own team members, and the valuable participants. I am here with the greatest privilege, and with that privilege comes the great responsibility to honor and thank Dr. Shashi Tharoor by delivering the vote of thanks today on this unique occasion. In absence, Dr. Tharoor, your words have seemingly assured a panicked world, and in fact, it was to assure the human mankind. The very genesis of Postcovid talks was initiated by Sri P. Vijayan IPS. I am sure that this talk has turned out to be a glittering function with a digital presence, and today's session has given fantastic insights and an excellent overview about the topic. Your thoughts and words brings new happiness and a lot of new inspirations to the life of the people who are attending this talk. We at Mission Better Tomorrow is quite confident that this talk will create a positive impact and will definitely guide us through in the days to come so as to approach further life with a fresh perspective by keeping expectations of a new world leadership in the post-COVID world as said by you. The interesting questions posed itself shows that your thoughtful expressions have really resonated well with the audience. I just wish to conclude by informing the entire audience and to Mr. Tharoor's office that this program has been viewed by more than 3 lakh participants put together in Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram and Zoom, and 119K in Daily Hunt. We had run a quiz to spot the work of Mr. Tharoor from others. It was evident that he still is the most popular cyber citizen by the overwhelming response we got, and we had randomly selected 3 of them to give them an award by offering a copy of the book Tharoorosaurus. The winners are Siddharth Dinesh, Shreya MS, and Gauri Krishna. Congratulations to all. In absence, Dr. Tharoor, I wish to mention to you that Mission Better Tomorrow is grateful to you, and we are delighted by your gracious presence. And I, on behalf of Team MBT and also on behalf of the entire audience viewing this talk across the world, express our profuse thanks for accepting our invitation and addressing us. Mission Better Tomorrow continues to create milestones by entering into the next talk series 5.0 of Postcovid, and the theme for the next 10 talks is Coloring the Life. And also we have another talk by young achievers to the students named as Padavugal. Thanking each one of you for attending this session. Stay safe, take care, stay healthy. Good night.
Good night.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा